Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emma Whiteman, and I'm a senior content marketer and tech writer here at Triumvirate Environmental. I'm so excited to be your moderator for today's Service Spotlight. These Service Spotlights are a bit different from our webinars. You'll hear a quick presentation from our experts before we turn it over to a lengthy Q&A session, and we'll wrap up at 2:45. Our informative long-form webinars are still being offered throughout the year. So before we get started, I'd like to share that everyone's mics and cameras will be turned off for the entirety of the webinar. You can use the questions tab on the right side of your screen to communicate with us and ask questions. Please keep in mind that you will receive a copy of the slide deck and recording in the days following the event conclusion if your question goes unanswered. Today, we continue our Service Spotlight series with EHS Consulting, and I'm so pleased to introduce today's speakers, Mike Albert and Ian Lanza. Mike Albert is EHS Director and EHS1 Program Owner at Triumvirate Environmental, focusing on business growth, sustainability, and compliant program management. An EHS veteran of 14 plus years, he specializes in delivering exceptional client service and strategic solutions to any size organization needing support. Ian Lanza is Triumvirate Environmental's National Director of On-Site Support Services, leading programs at customers' facilities. He has designed and rolled out service programs nationwide. He and his teams partner with some of the world's premier biotech, pharmaceutical, healthcare, and academia institutions to build value through sustainability, safety, and environmental programs. Without further ado, I'm so pleased to turn it over to Ian and Mike.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Emma. We really appreciate everybody coming and joining us today for this quick service spotlight. We're going to be very excited to talk through a bunch of items here. You know, consulting is the big topic of discussion, so we're going to talk quite a bit about that, but ultimately how it's broken up. You know, Ian and I have seen it through the years where we have grown, where consulting has changed from either project-based or some kind of person on site doing some type of work, helping out safety departments nationally. And ultimately, we're trying to push it so that it helps you. It purposely is out there to help you get what needs to get done so you don't get fined, and ultimately we can all work together in a good partnership so that, guess what, you are getting what you need out of this service. So overall, we'll start off and then we'll get jumping right into it. Ian and I will bounce back and forth a little bit here. So EHS consulting as a service comes in a couple different ways. It really comes on, you know, we can bounce in like secret, you know, allies and make sure that we get projects done, get some good routine reporting in, make sure that your compliance is baseline, make sure that you get that, you know, air permit done at a certain case, but also see it as a bigger object where, hey, if you need someone to cover for certain types of, you know, out of office, we can help with that as well. So overall, consulting is seen in many different ways that we go through, but we're going to start to break it down a little bit further. A lot of what we see out there is broken down into a couple buckets. So we see a lot of project-based where it's, you know, permits, renewals, so on and so forth, where you have to get it done. Certain states, certain counties in California that we see quite a bit need to get things done on an annual basis. So therefore, it's like, hey, we got to get these permits done. We got to make sure that we get it into the right CUPAs or the right EPA or the right fire department so that you're in compliance and they don't come knocking on your door asking for more questions. Another bucket that we'd like to really help out with and that we see a lot out there is programs and planning. You know, OSHA dictates what needs to get done in your entire business. So therefore, we're there to be able to provide an update by something that you or your company wrote or something that was a long time ago, or start fresh. A lot of companies come out of incubators or they're moving into a brand new building. You're going from a small R&D, big R&D, small manufacturing, big manufacturing, upscale. These are all going to be things that you're going to need in there, and then you're going to need more of them. It's not going to be just the basic big three OSHA plans that we always talk about, but it's going to be more than that. And that's something that can really set a tone and a baseline for what you can build off of. And then a third bucket is really around audits, training, assessments. You want to know when you can pop the hood and just ultimately say, hey, what's going good? What's not going good? What's going well from safety? What's going well from the environment? And as things change, as hazards are introduced, as new processes are introduced, as new lines are introduced, as we see in a lot of contract manufacturing out there, what's happening? and then what changes to then be able to train on it as well. So there's a lot of different things that can happen in the process. It depends on how you want to pick and choose to ultimately get your program from, hey, I think I'm doing great, and you know what, you probably are, to filling in a couple holes, or is your bandwidth just too small because there's so much going on that you're like, I cannot do all this type of work. And these are the types of things that you can really utilize someone for once in a while or consistently on a nice routine basis. These three we like to call out specifically because in consulting, we see a lot with biosafety. There's certain types of regulations in certain types of areas across the country, plus federal government funding dictates certain types of rules and regulations that you have to do, CDC, NIH, so on and so forth, that'll really change how you have to operate. And that's something that is pretty common that's going on. And then really floating down to employee exposure and regulatory agency response, because they kind of go hand in hand. If you have an issue on site, or you think you might have an issue on site with some type of employee exposure, these are things that certified industrial hygienists or people with great backgrounds in the industrial hygiene world can really help out with and really come in and go, hey, we solved the problem, proved it wasn't there, or we proved it was there and we got to fix that problem. So that's it there too. And then we don't want to be knocking anybody's doors, but we all know regulatory agencies are out there and they're coming, not for you per se, but just to check on the program, do their own check on it, make sure that all compliance is solid and set as well. So within the project side, this is how we always see in consulting go, where it's, hey, come in, help us out, and then, hey, we'll talk to you in a little while. And that's perfectly fine. But these are some of the objects that you want to consider, especially with working with different types of chemicals and or biologics in your area, and then what the exposure is to potential employees out there as well. So with that being said, Ian, let's switch to the other side a little bit.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so over my career at Triumvirate, we've seen a big demand and need from our customers in the market for what we call embedded consulting services. And this is where we will place some of our staff on site at our customer's site to help them manage those ongoing programs on site. So, very strategically, we've built a very large team. We probably have over 1,000 people across the country who are, again, embedded at our customers' sites. And these people, the team we've built is quite diverse, from early career professionals all the way up to senior directors and VP level folks. Not only do we have a pretty wide berth of different level career folks, we have lots of different skill sets as well. So from maybe hazardous material managers who are doing a little bit more tactical hazmat, movement or inspections or monitoring, to more generalist EHS folks that can help with the day-to-day ongoing management of programs, to some very strong kind of subject matter experts, whether it's certified industrial hygienists, environmental experts, OSHA experts, whatever it may be. And we spend, again, at least since I've been here for the past 20 years, really kind of building this team up and these competencies up across the country to meet the demands and needs of our customers. To talk about our customers a little bit, and again, we've continued to see a pretty strong demand for this service kind of grow in all the sectors, that we're in. We're seeing customers come to us, especially some of the larger ones, saying, hey, can you help us fill in this gap in our EHS department? Either we're having a hard time hiring somebody, the turnover is too much, we don't have the specific skill set. A lot of times companies will partner with us and we'll be able to fill in that gap. More and more, we're seeing more and more of those departments being outsourced to us for very strategic reasons around the level of effort to get people in, or maybe the cost associated with it. And they'll defer to having us kind of manage that part of it. Some of our smaller customers, they may not be ready to hire full-time EHS professionals yet. or maybe they need a couple hours of, senior level person and a couple hours of more kind of inspections and material handling. Very hard to find one person who's qualified to do director level, visioning and planning, as well as maybe waste handling. So a lot of times people will lean on our outsource model to maybe get 30 or 40 hours of work through 4 different people just to get that, exact expertise. So lots of different reasons, our customers are leaning on us. And again, we work very closely with them and really kind of studied this EHS market closely and have really kind of built out the capabilities to meet our customers' needs. Mike, if you don't mind advancing the slide for me real quick. So what to expect? So, Mike and I spend a lot of time working, with our customers. We're like, hey, we're really interested in this service. We'd like to get it going, like to learn more about it. What can we expect? What would we think about? So it starts with us really trying to understand your organizational needs in your plan. So we do a lot of listening and asking questions to really kind of understand what problems you need to solve, how best to do it within your organization. And as we've kind of collected all that, information, we'll work with you to build out, your strategic plan. And again, this is going to look different for everybody. If you're outsourcing an entire department to us, a bit more planning, there's a lot of different components to it. Maybe you have a large department already and you're just looking for one person to fill in, it's a little bit more straightforward. But again, we want to make sure we're aligned with you in the leadership on, how our team is going to be partnering with your organization. Once we have that kind of strategic plan, we understand, where we're going and so on. Then we drill down into a little bit more detail and identify the specific objectives and targets, that our group will be responsible for. What it is, the timeline, how we're going to get there. We want to be very transparent. That exactly what to expect. We'll create a staffing plan. So understand where we're going. We'll select the appropriate people to get us there on the Triumvirate side. Things that we consider are, where the person is in their career, as well as their skill sets and their traits, right? And we'll try and match what I call scope to skills, where we're really trying to understand what the scope of the work is and match it to the skills of the people on our team. And it's really important to us that we get the staffing plan right. We get our customers the right person to meet the very specific objectives and targets that we've agreed upon. Once we get started, we'll have routine communication where the on-site person will provide status reports and other updates on what they're working on. There'll also be a management representative from Triumvirate to make sure that, again, our customers are getting everything that they're looking for out of the experience. And if we need to course correct or if the scope needs to change, again, there's management folks in place that are able to move very, very quickly through those requests.
It looks like Ian may have jumped off. Mike, do you feel comfortable finishing the rest of the slides up while we get Ian back online?
Absolutely, no problem at all. So a big portion of what we see, to Ian's point around turning things around quickly, the communication is high. You don't just hire the person in the front line of what we provide, but it's the back end people as well. And it's the subject matter experts and it's deep industry knowledge that you also hire when you hire that front person there. They may not be able to answer that question right away. It might be some permitting thing. It might be a high end, oh, this is an injury. Do we call OSHA or not? They're going to know for the most part, oh, we're going to have to do something about this and then be able to manage the next steps. But they have that person behind there as well. Mr. Ian, are we back? We always love technology. It's all good.
I think we're back. If you can hear me, I guess we're back.
You're
Sorry, I'm
good.
not sure where I cut out. Did you finish? You jump in, Mike? The team here, were you able to get us to the end?
This is what we do. We're gonna have some fun, Ian. So a lot of it's really the access to subject matter experts, making sure it's there, and making sure some good choices are made in the process. You know, it's a team effort ultimately. So with that being said, you know, what we also look at, you know, Ian, why don't we flop around here a little bit, right? So like who we serve. You and I have served many customers in our careers, and we've seen what Triumvirate ultimately wants to build here. And between these niches, between how we operate out there, there's a lot of different EHS community members and facilities members and others that are looking for it. But Ian, what are some of your thoughts on, you know, the customer base that we see out here too?
We may have lost Ian again, maybe some internet issues. So Mike, why don't you keep going and see if he is able to get the internet back working.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Yeah, apologize about this internet here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
You're good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, why don't I give this one more shot, Mike? And if we cut out again, it seems like your internet's a little better than mine. I'll have you run with it. So I'll try and finish this, and if not, you can just hop in and finish it. So when we build our EHS, you know, operations and consulting teams that we've been referring to, we really focus in these end markets. And so the EHS programs that you often find in academia and in healthcare and in life sciences, those are the programs that we've become experts in. You know, our staff, whether they're kind of homegrown and they gain all their experience through this, you know, embedded model, they're gaining it within these sectors. The folks that we bring in, oftentimes we're bringing them in who have done EHS within these sectors. So our expertise, you know, we really, again, are an EHS operations and service firm with expertise in the life sciences, advanced manufacturing, and higher education areas. And so again, we really try and focus the EHS programs that we're good at within these sectors. As far as that staffing plan and kind of figuring out who you get, you know, we'll make sure it's somebody that's comfortable and familiar with, you know, implementing and running these programs within, you know, the end market that our customer is in.
Excellent. So really, how do you need to know, or how do you know when you need some consulting? And it comes around from all the projects we talked about, comes around from my report is due in a month, EPA is knocking on my door, and or, oh, there was some kind of TSCA regulation that we got to do. Yeah, you know it for the most part. You are knowledgeable, you're smart, you understand it, but it's a matter of how can we help from good subject matter experts to come in, figure out what we need to get done, little bit of runway, take care of it, get it off your plate, because we know your priorities are beyond looking at normal reporting every year, beyond normal inspections every day sometimes, and making sure your facility is up and operational, you know. And to Ian's point, there was a lot of strategic thought around how to put the right people, the right trained people, and the right smart people with you to make sure that you remain in a good baseline for compliance, you get more involved in the process, and you ultimately get better so that efficiency gets better, and we're helping you as well. So there's a lot of that going on, and it's ultimately, if you don't have the bandwidth, and it has nothing to do with if you know it or not, it's simply, I have 120 things to do today, and I can only get to 60 of them, and this is going to compound and compound and compound. What can we do to help out? These are things that can help. And then realize that training is one of the things that we know we need to do, and finding people to do it is sometimes a little bit difficult, but training, retraining, understanding what needs to happen, and finding a person who can do it all the time and make sure that they can do it while you're reporting on your corporate goals and your CSRs and making sure that everything's compliant. Oh yeah, EPA just knocked on the door. All that we can help give you time to find those right people in there as well, give the training, and really just make sure that everything is going really well within your facility with the right subject matter expertise. So with that, Ian, any last parting words on our last little slide here?
No, I think that's it. Again, we've built these resources. They're here for our customers. They're here for you. And we built these to help our customers and our prospects, meet their goals based on whatever their situation is. So I think that sums it up.
Excellent. That's great. Emma, welcome back to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll just take a quick minute to thank everybody for their patience while dealing with these technical difficulties. It seems like it's one of those days here at Triumvirate, but we're all getting through it together. That being said, now's your opportunity to ask our experts your questions. And Mike, Ian, we already have tons of great questions coming in, so I'm going to dive right in. Someone here is wondering about, does this EHS consulting completely eliminate the need to have an internal EHS team that's owned by the broader organization, or is it more of an add-on?
I think it's an interesting question. So I guess it depends exactly what you're saying. At the end of the day, there would have to be some degree of ownership and sponsorship from the customer. Now that could come from a CFO or an executive or maybe a facilities director, depending on kind of where that would lie. As far as the EHS subject matter expertise and the ability to implement those programs, that's really where Triumvirate comes into play. So again, if there's an expert, if you need to implement XYZ EHS program at a hospital or at a biotech, we have the skills and ability to do that. That being said, generally we would look for a strong kind of sponsor within the organization, right? Because we don't necessarily work there, but we have the skills to help your company get there. I think that answers the question. I guess the only other thing I would say, it is common, and we're seeing this more and more, to not hire any EHS professionals and to outsource, again, those roles to us. But again, generally, we would have a contractor reporting in somewhere within the organization. Again, I think of it as an organizational sponsor, if you will, to help us move the agenda forward.
And we've seen it sometimes too, to your point, Ian, where it's like you can outsource a lot. You can outsource it for a little while. You can say, hey, I need someone every single day for the next 3 months until I find my internal hire or my internal person, because they're a facilities head or they're running something else. Then it's a matter of how we can scale and how we can manage the expectations while keeping compliance and while even potentially training the next person that you want to do and get hired in the process. So therefore, we can help. We can help a little, we can help a lot. It can be outsourced. Does it have to be all the time? No. But to both our points, we can find a good happy medium so you can get your subject matter expertise, but also keep your programs in compliance.
That's great. Thank you both for your comments on that. And that kind of leads into, or you kind of already answered this question, but someone here is asking, does Triumvirate Environmental provide both short and long-term support? They're not really sure how long they'll need the help, and they're not sure what that would look like, but is that possible to kind of have a mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think of we're here to help, right? And if it's a short-term assignment, if it's a long-term assignment, if it's this specific thing, if it's the whole thing, we have the luxury to build a very large EHS operations team. And so if it scales down and scales up or down, like we're very good at doing that, because we're managing a portfolio of assignments opposed to just managing one specific site, so we don't quite, but we can almost have unlimited EHS resources to scale up and scale down.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. You mentioned training when you were going through the last slide there. So what's your approach to training your on-site teams that would be implemented on a client site?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways to do that. So one, we have like a whole training program we put our staff through. It depends on what level of career they're at and what their area of interest is. So we have a lot of kind of internal training to develop people. As far as, I'm not sure if you're asking what it looks like, what would the on-site training, look like? It depends early on in that strategic plan and how we're going to fit into it. If you have an EHS department and maybe you have 6 people on site and you just need one of our people to do something, we would talk through what the onboarding and training would look like, what skills you want them to show up with. There's always going to be some degree of onboarding, whether it's just to get a badge or to kind of figure out where to park or what kind of the rules are. Unless you were specifically looking for this, you would not be responsible for training our staff on the skills needed to complete the scope of work, right? That's what we're bringing to the table. We're bringing to the table experienced, skilled professionals to solve your specific problem. Now, sometimes we do have some customers that are like, yeah, just give us an early career person give us a good early career Triumvirate person who's smart and can figure it out, and I'll do all the training for them. So sometimes we have customers that are actually looking for that, right? And we can do that. But the majority of the time, we will bring the skills and the experience to meet your objectives. We wouldn't burden the customer with training our staff on how to do their thing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Something that the audience seems to have a lot of questions on here are audits and inspections. The first question that just came in was, besides OSHA, who could require an inspection?
So there's a lot of different agencies out there. And as we mentioned, certain subject matter expertises like the biosafety world or the industrial hygiene world, OSHA sticks out, but so does, agencies like Environmental Protection Agency. There's certain CUPAs out in California. There's the Department of Public Health. There's a lot of local departments that really look upon and say, hey, what are you doing to keep everything in your lab? How are you managing that process? What's going to happen there? And then it's really a matter of making sure that your local, state, counties, fire departments, and they are happy as well, because there's a big gap between what OSHA says on the federal level and then what we look at on a very local and state level, and it could vary quite a bit. Prime example is that fire departments are getting more stringent to require a fire prevention engineering firm to help them manage many more reports. And it's not just a simple paper permit that has to go in anymore to manage your flammables on site. And I know some people on the call don't even have to worry about too much on flammables because it's almost like a handshake sometimes with the fire department, depending on what county you're in. But the more strict you're in these cases, the hubs of R&Ds between the Bostons, the South San Frans, and even we're seeing it out in the Chicagos and Illinois areas, where we're seeing more and more stringency around what you got to regulate, what you got to bring on site, and then what's around it in the process. So good example of how things are changing, but it's not only OSHA gardening everything. There's many other agencies out there that they're being looked at as well.
Yeah, and just to add, it's a hard question for us EHS people, because there's federal agencies, there's state agencies, and then there's local agencies, and it seems to be the cities that we like to operate in. There's lots of nuance on the local requirements, and so again, as far as the capabilities, we look to have those resources available in those key cities that our customers are in. If you're not sure who's going to regulate you, that's one of the projects that Mike was talking about earlier. We can come in and help build you a legal registry and identify, what EHS programs you need and who could potentially audit you and what you need to do to be prepared for that. If we were running your department, that's was one of the early steps in our process of running a program, is to really identify the EHS programs that are applicable specifically to you, right? And then build those programs and be inspection ready for whoever may come in.
Yeah, that's a great point, working with those teams there. Someone here, it's a little similar to this past question. I think it's a little bit different as well. What are some of the things that are usually missing in most audits or inspections, or what are some of the top requirements that, you never see, just to give someone maybe a leg up if they've sat in on this webinar?
A lot comes down to when you first look at, do you own the space or do you not own the space? Let's start there, because when you own a space, you got to really look at air, water, what's coming into the facility from your environmental factors, and what's going out. Those are things that we'll see when they're like, oh no, we own the facility, we built the facility. All right, well, what's going out the stacks? Where's your water going? I see retention ponds outside. There's a lot of discussion around that. When you lease, it could still be in there, but it's something where we always say, hey, look at the lease language, see what you're responsible for. In some cases, even air and water, you have to take care of, but in many, it's under the landlord, under the bigger scenario of what's going on. However, if you're looking at high scale manufacturing or you're leasing from a warehouse and ultimately you did the whole thing, things that are commonly missed are consistent calculations on air permitting, making sure you have all your data through wastewater, industrial wastewater permits. So those types of agencies that come through, another agency that looks for in the process. And then really it's like, what are you funded by? So, and I bring this up because there are a lot of people out there know that, hey, if I'm funded by National Institute of Health for biologicals, I got to host certain meetings around institutional biosafety committee meetings, certain areas I got to hold a permit to make sure that I'm actually doing it right. These are things that we see pop up because they're like, well, I moved from such and such a state and now I'm in a more highly regulated area, but I don't know it. So those are things that pop up. In some cases, like right now, we have a couple audits going on where one is highly environmentally focused and one is highly safety focused. I see these as good and bad in some cases, where good, because you're going to get what you want on the safety side. Oh, I'm going to notice someone doing something, reaching wrong, potentially having an injury, or, hey, there's a crane going overhead. Where's our hard hat? What's the deal here? Versus if you were just looking at environmental, those are things we're going to notice, but the efficiency of trying to get everything done in the same time will go down. And you'll just be looking at the air and water and go from there. So those are some of the things we see, and it's really documentation and documentation for training. Trainings come up a little bit here and there, but it's a matter of when you train, you have to document, and you got to keep it active. These are going to be things that, HR is going to come and ask for. If someone unfortunately has an injury or potentially has an injury, they want to make sure people are trained on processes, the baseline programs are in place, and making sure that it's all functional and up to date, and you're not dusting it off the shelf in the back room because you haven't looked at it in 5 years. So those are some of the highlights that we see out there in the process. And honestly, we just see more and more every day, but people are getting more and more educated, and they're saying, hey, I need someone to just come in here and take care of this because I need some check boxes done. To Ian's point, build that legal register and then really take off from there, and how we can become more efficient and compliant in the process.
Great. So it sounds like there are a lot of things that an inspector would be looking for during an audit, or things that can maybe go wrong. Have either of you ever seen anything that's particularly notable when a client has had an audit? If you're allowed to share.
Well, from a colleague of mine, we heard a story, and they were going in for a normal routine OSHA audit. Believe it or not, we're talking about other agencies, but they were going in for their normal twice a year audit that this client loved to do, because it was a matter of, hey, you see the subject matter expert, you know what's going on. And then, hey, if a new procedure or placement, or if someone's doing something they're not supposed to, gets noticed, and we bring it up. So our colleague walks in, and then they go over and say, hey, I'm here for the normal audit that we do. They're like, yep, we talked last week. However, we're going to have to go over in a room over here because we had OSHA here yesterday. And he's like, okay, so what happened? So they talked about how, unfortunately, an employee lost part of their limb in a flywheel because they got too close. Lockout, tagout was not in place, and it wasn't done properly. It was rushed. It was at the end of the day. I bring this up because the irony of this whole thing was this person was also in the safety training video that they made about lockout, tagout, and this specific process. So it goes to, even though your people go through training, even though you have programs in place, even though you have good subject matter expertise that come in and check and see what's going on, accidents happen, and when people rush, it gets worse. So your culture around safety, your culture around take a moment, think about what's going on, make sure you're not getting hurt, make sure my employee's not getting hurt. And yes, you, the safety professional or the facilities person or whoever it may be who's been doing it for 25 years, take a step back. Don't do it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a holiday weekend. I'm going to do it Monday. I'm going to do it Tuesday, or you plan it a little bit differently. So just a good story lesson learned over the process where things can happen and go from there.
Yeah, thanks for that story, Mike. That was wild. That's very unexpected, but it brings up an interesting point about safety committees and prioritizing safety. So do either of you have any tips on getting the most out of an on-site safety committee?
You know, we get to run a lot of safety committees in this embedded model. You know, I think getting people in the room is important. You know, personally, I like to, you know, you got to have people that are going to contribute to it, make it a positive experience, and then be able to influence change. So getting the right people there, you know, is one. Running a strong meeting with a strong agenda and clear objectives, so everybody knows what they're there to accomplish, including metrics, you know, where possible, to quantify performance or to set targets, is really kind of the next part. You know, and when you can do those two things, the safety committees are a great way to make some of these initiatives come alive, right? We talk a lot about how do you build a safety culture, how do you incorporate safety into, you know, day-to-day operations, and it's those can be great ways, again, to engage people. And again, if we can set very clear agendas and targets, it's a great way to bring safety to the forefront, or to incorporate it into people's, you know, regular jobs. Because a lot of times, you know, the people we're building the safety committees for, they're the humans responsible for being safe. But they're also responsible for lots of other things, you know, at your organization and whatever they were hired to do. So the more that we can deliver and drive that message of safety, and get them to think about that when they approach their job, you know, that's really where those committees can be successful. And when people start thinking about their job through that lens, that's when you start reducing the number of injuries, and then all of the costs associated with that. So if it is an effectively run committee, I do think it's a good tactic to incorporate, you know, safety into a culture and really increase your safety performance at an organization.
And to that point, getting higher level individuals involved, getting the site head, getting the general manager, getting a vice president who is on site, not maybe in every meeting, but to how you're changing the culture, them seeing it in action, people bringing it up, and then inviting them in, and maybe even having them participate a little bit. I had one time where we invited the site head into a safety meeting where the consultant was like, we're going to go out and do an inspection of the manufacturing floor. And we're like, well, everything's fine. It's like, well, let's go do it together and let's manage the process and understand it. And it wasn't only the site head, general manager that gained from it. It was others that gained from the interaction, going on the floor, presence of like 8 or 9 people actually interacting with that team on the floor. And nothing was major fines, but there were little things between, hey, can we go clean up that corner? Oh, well, I don't have time for that. Oh, well, can we take care of this manufacturing line? It's been broken for 6 months. What are we going to do? So those are things that could come up. And it's not only direct safety, but it's the interaction of then it's the culture, to Ian's point, where you can really drive it forward and have bigger impact.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and definitely something that's, you know, becoming more and more relevant, having these safety committees and keeping that top of mind. Similar to that point, but I guess a little different, almost more on the audit side, but can EHS consultants perform gap assessments? And then will these gap assessments, how will they help improve waste programs, sustainability programs, compliance, all of these types of things that consultants typically help with?
So we help out with a slew of different gap assessments, risk assessments. We call them health checks in many cases, of popping that hood that we talked a little bit about before. And depending on the level you want, I mentioned a little bit before around, hey, is it environmental? Should we look at the haz waste program? Should we look at the regulated medical waste program? Should we look at regulated waste in general? Go through that. But then also look at the environmental side of air, water, stormwater, all this kind of stuff. What are we going to do in the process? And then it can grow. Because gap assessments, it's really on the people, it's on the building, it's on the programs, and safety doesn't stop from just, oh, well, guess what? Now waste is in a container, or that I put my tool down, so that's it. Hazards pop up all the time. So audits, gap assessments, they exist. We can do them. We utilize skilled individuals who have multiple years of experience to do them. Everybody's like, well, why is it so expensive? It's like, well, we had someone who has seen the industry, who has seen other industries, can bring viable examples, know the regulatory background, and know the local background as well. It's a lot of things to cover in the process, and it's not as easy as just walking on site and looking at everything in there as well. It's reviewing the documents, checking the training, and interacting with employees. You know, we love talking with employees that are on lines or in R&D to see how things are interacting and honestly get a good opinion and snapshot of how compliance is working on site.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I love doing those types of assessments. It's one of the fun parts of my job is I get to go to all of these different facilities and kind of see how people do things and help them kind of identify where gaps, may be. The two comments I would have is, even the best programs I think are worth auditing. And there's always something, right? And that's the hard thing, as the perfectionist in me with some of this EHS stuff, there's always going to be a gap somewhere. And so going through these, even with really good programs, it's been a lot of fun because we can help identify how you make a really good program, even better. So I'd say, it's worth doing, everywhere. The other thing I would add is, as an EHS professional coming in to a foreign facility, we're not always keen to how it's always been done before, or it was set up this way and this is how we do it, or culturally we do it this way or that way. We're really trained to look at it through the regulatory lens and through whatever scope lens that we've agreed upon. And some of the more successful ones I've been part of, we identified things that it had always been done that way, or oh yeah, we do it that way because of X, Y, and Z. And they were really thinking about it and looking at it through an organizational lens and a little bit less through a risk management or a compliance lens, or maybe a waste minimization lens or a cost saving lens, whatever they were looking for our help with. And again, because we're not always privy to all of, again, the cultural biases of how things are done, we can really help kind of identify potential for improvement, whether it's waste min or cost savings or compliance. And I think that's a real value you can get from that type of service, and one of my more kind of favorite things to work on, because you can usually always find something to help somebody out with.
Great answers, guys. That all sounds good. And it seems like there's, we've been talking about a lot of different things like the general EHS programs, the, waste programs. We talked briefly on industrial hygiene, biosafety, all these things. I think we have time for one more quick question. So someone here was wondering, how do they know which type of consultant is best for their site?
It starts with a conversation, right? And that's a big part that, again, Mike and I both get to work on these things. We're trained to just ask a lot of questions and listen. And we're going to ask questions that are going to guide us to that answer. We're trying to figure out which resources we mobilize for you, because we have a lot and it's pretty diverse, but you have a very specific challenge that you're working through. So, we're going to ask a lot of questions. We love to see things if we can. and really kind of talk through what you're looking for. And through that process, we're really using that to refine and build a scope of work or priorities for you or how we can help you. But it really starts with the conversation, with us, and then we'll go from there. And we'll want to make sure you're 100% comfortable with what we're proposing to do before we would start anything.
Sure. Yeah, that all makes sense. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, although there's been so many great questions and answered here. So thank you so much, Mike and Ian, for answering all these questions and for such an incredibly informative event. And thank you so much to everyone for attending today. As I mentioned earlier, you will receive an email with a copy of the presentation and the recording. Please feel free to reach out with further questions. Mike and Ian's contact information is here. Otherwise, you can reach out to myself. After the event, you will be directed to a short survey about your experience today. A link to the short survey will also be in the follow-up email that we will send. We would greatly appreciate your feedback on this Service Spotlight format and the event overall, including any and all ideas you have for upcoming future topics. Thank you so much for your participation. We look forward to seeing you at future Triumvirate Environmental events. Take care.